Very good evening and a warm welcome to the weekend edition of Primetime News on TV1. I'm Zinat Mustafa, joined by our news interpreter for tonight, Harika Gabriel via Zoom. Let's take a look at your headlines for tonight.
Partily Champika worker resigns from the Jatika Hela Urumaya. Illegal construction in the vicinity of the ancient Vijayapura fortress. A virus to eradicate the Sena caterpillar. Isolation status on 6 housing complexes lifted. Will there be a lockdown during the festive season?
උත්සව සමය පටන් ගන්නේ සාමාන්‍ය 22 23න් පස්සේ. ඉතින් තව දින 10ක් පමණ කාලයක් තිබෙනවා.
On to your top story tonight. General Secretary of the Jatika Hela Urumaya, Partali Champika Ranavaka, resigned from the party today. The resignation was during a special party convention at the Sri Lanka Foundation Institute. A group of members involved in active politics with the Jatika Hela Urumaya, including its General Secretary Partali Champika Ranavaka, resigned from the party today. This included former parliamentarian Karunaratna Parnavithana, the party's national organizer Nishant Shri Varnasinghe, and several provincial councillors. Accordingly, the new office bearers were appointed during a party convention in which the resignations were announced this afternoon. Venerable Hadigalle Vimalasarathero was appointed as the new leader of the Jatika Hela Urumaya, while Bandula Chandrasekhara had been appointed as the General Secretary. Other appointments included Daya Pereira as Deputy Leader, Tudor Pereira as Deputy Secretary, Anil Jawardhan as Treasurer, and Mahendra Jayasinghe as the National Organizer.
අපි සමාජයේ කිසියම් දුරකට දවන්ත සමාජ බලයක් මෙහෙවාගත හැකි කුඩා කණ්ඩායමක් හැටියට ඉඳලා
An opportunity has arisen to form a strong force that can grow into a movement in the country. The pioneers of the Jatika Hela Urumaya have a responsibility of creating a new socio-political movement. We are bidding goodbye to the party with a heavy heart to engage in a new political journey. This country requires a movement comprising of enlightened Buddhist monks and Buddhist leaders. I categorically mention the word enlightened since there is an accusation that monks are expecting charity to be used in assisting election campaigns. On the other hand, we are witnessing certain Buddhist monks speaking on behalf of individuals involved in money laundering. Therefore, we need a movement comprising of powerful Buddhist monks who can appear on behalf of the problems faced by the Buddhists and the clergy while protecting the dignity of their robe instead of acting as the henchmen of politicians. A powerful force is required in society. We are holding talks to establish a new party under the Samagi Jana Balawegya. This will not mean that we are attempting to form a party similar to the United National Party, in which power revolves around a person or a group of individuals. We will not pledge our support to form a party similar to the UNP. We will support the Samagi Jana Balawegya if it is formed with fresh names as a democratic party on the foundation of a constitution. We have been receiving positive responses on this matter. Therefore, we will not make hasty decisions. We will only act swiftly to form a social movement to address the dashed hopes and aspirations that were offered by Gotabaya Rajapaksa. We are witnessing a breakdown of the system in the country. The old group of politicians surrounding him are only focused on consolidating their powers in the country. We can see that the Sri Lanka Podjana Peramana is being restructured to give room to the old faces once again. To counter that, we require a strong political movement at the grassroots. This country needs a strong movement that can bring light to this country. We need a social movement.
රනින් කළ උඩුවෙනක් අපට රටට අවශ්‍යයි ඉදිරියට යන්න ආලෝකමත් ක්‍රියාවලියක් දවන්ත සමාජ ව්‍යාපාරයක්.
The Civil Aviation Authority of Sri Lanka, in a statement, informed that commercial and charter flight operations to Sri Lanka will resume on the 26th of this month. The statement added that the appropriate directives to the travel industry will be issued in due course. Taking a look at a COVID update in Sri Lanka, another 632 confirmed COVID-19 cases were reported in the island today. As of this evening, the number of COVID-19 cases reported from the island had reached 32,007. Another 473 recoveries were reported today, bringing the total number of recoveries to 23,304. 8,556 active cases are currently under medical supervision. These were some of the views expressed by Army Commander Lieutenant General Shavendra Silva. Meanwhile, the isolation status on 6 housing complexes in Colombo was lifted this morning. Accordingly, the isolation status on the Randiya Uyana in Mattakkuliya, Metsanda 7 in Modara, Mihijai 7 in Modara, Muadara Uyana and Samagipura in Grand Pass and Mihindu Senpura in Damatagoda were lifted at 6 a.m. today.
කොළඹ නගරේ
9 police jurisdictions in the Colombo district have been isolated. The police jurisdictions are Maradana, Maligavatta, Kesselvatta, Wolfendal Street, Dam Street, Kotahena, Dembatagoda, Modara and Grand Pass. The isolation status of 6 housing complexes were lifted this morning. The residents of these housing complexes can leave their homes and move about within the vicinity. However, they are not permitted to leave the vicinity and engage in their daily activities. Although the isolation status of these housing complexes was lifted, the surrounding police jurisdictions except for Mattakkuliya have been declared as isolated areas.
මෙම මහල් නිවාසවල අගුළු දැමීම මුදා හැරියත් එම පොලිස් බල ප්‍රදේශ උදකලා කර තිබෙනවා.
When will the isolation status on other housing complexes be lifted?
සෑම නිවාස සංකීර්ණයකම එක් නිවසකින්
On the 7th of this month, we commenced a program where one individual from each household is subjected to a PCR test and an antigen test. Approximately 2/3 of the locals residing in housing complexes in the area belonging to these 6 housing complexes. We plan to carry out PCR and antigen testing in a similar manner on the residents of the remaining 7 housing complexes which are currently under isolation. After we complete the testing process, we plan on lifting the isolation status within the next 2 or 3 days.
ඔවුනුත් මේ ආකාරයෙන් හුදකලා භාවයෙන් ඉවත් කිරීමට කටයුතු කරනු ලබනවා.
Has the quarantine procedure for returnees been amended?
විශේෂයෙන්ම පිට රටවල් වලින් පැමිණෙන
The practice at present is one where returnees undergo the mandatory quarantine for 14 days at quarantine centers operated by the government or hotels, then further quarantine for another 14 days at home. Under the new decision based on instructions issued by the Director General of the Ministry of Health, the 14-day self-quarantine period will be removed. This document is due to be published within the next 48 hours.
කිරීමට ප්‍රදේශ ලබා දීලා තිබෙනවා. හෙළිපිය මහිතන අධහෙට ඉවත් නිකුත් වීමට නියමිතයි.
Will there be a lockdown during the festive season?
උත්සව සමය පටන් ගන්නේ සාමාන්‍ය 22.
The festive season begins after the 22nd of this month. We have 10 more days for that. Decisions are based on the latest COVID-19 developments in the country. The National Operations Center for the Prevention of COVID-19 Outbreak meets with the President every day to discuss these issues. Thus far, we have no plans on imposing quarantine curfew regulations or isolating any areas. However, this may change with the developments that take place the next few days.
COVID-19 සමැදිව ඇති වෙන තත්ත්වයන් අනුව මෙය වෙනස් වීමටත් ඕනනම් පුළුවන්.
Health authorities urged locals in areas that were released from isolation to strictly adhere to health guidelines.
මහර අවස්ථාවලදී යම් සෞඛ්‍ය
At a time the country is facing a health crisis, state authorities are compelled to take certain decisions disregarding social and economic repercussions. The government decided to release these housing complexes from isolation after carrying out a comprehensive analysis. You must remember, although we lifted the isolation status of these housing complexes, we have not identified whether all residents are COVID infected or not. We reached such a decision against a backdrop where new patients are being identified daily. However, the risk is considerably less compared to before.
නමුත් ඒ වාර්තා වෙන ප්‍රමාණයන් ඒ අවදානම කලින් තිබුණට වඩා සැලකිය යුතු මට්ටමින් අඩු වෙලා තියෙනවා.
Meanwhile, all schools in the Gaul education zone have been closed until the 18th of December due to the current situation surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic. The Southern Provincial Governor's Office said 26 schools in the area will remain closed in compliance with directives issued by health authorities.
අපි ලබන සතියේ අපේ සාමාන්‍ය පෙර පන්තිවල ශිෂ්‍යයන් සඳහා විශේෂ
Although schools will remain closed, we will prepare a special work plan next week for students sitting for the upcoming ordinary level exam. This is not a complete shutdown of schools. We have imposed travel restrictions by setting up barricades at entry points to several areas. The shops in these areas will remain open. Therefore, people can purchase food and other essential commodities during this period.
ඒ තැන් වලින් ආහාර ද්‍රව්‍ය සහ අනිකුත් අවශ්‍ය දේවල් මිලදී ගන්න පුළුවන්.
The restrictions in the southern province have been imposed in the Kongaha, Talapitiya, Miniduwa, Makuluwa, Dangedara and Dedugoda North and South Grama Nildari divisions. Restrictions have also been imposed in Galbukka, East and West Grama Nildari divisions in the Baligama Divisional Secretariat and the Grama Nildari division of Kuhunugoda and Hettividya. The State Ministry of Prison Management and Prisoners Rehabilitation has announced that nearly 5,000 inmates will be released before the 31st of this month. Meanwhile, former Deputy Inspector General of Police Vas Gunawardena, who is on a death row at the Valikada prison, has tested positive for COVID-19. The former Deputy Police Chief has been admitted to the prison hospital after testing positive for the infection. Former Director of the Criminal Investigations Department, Shania Besekara, who is also remanded, had been admitted to the Infectious Diseases Hospital after testing positive for COVID-19 recently. The Southern Provincial Director of Health Services, Dr. Nihal Veerasurya, has said that the number of patients recorded in the town of Kandy has been displaying a downward trend.
Caution must be exercised when travelling to and from schools. The parents have a huge responsibility in this regard. Conduct yourselves responsibly by paying special attention. The number of infections in the Kandy town has been at a normal level. There is no high risk except for the general precaution that must be exercised against COVID-19. The situation is returning to normalcy.
Meanwhile, the All Ceylon Nurses Union has raised caution over a possible breakdown in operations at the Colombo National Hospital.
The hospital has 2,800 nurses and more than 1,000 doctors. There are around 4,000 junior level officers as well. The current situation is dangerous due to the spread of COVID-19. Therefore, the Health Ministry and the hospital administration must be responsible for this situation. Therefore, if safety protocols are not followed, it would lead to a breakdown in operations at the Colombo National Hospital.
The Archaeology Department has said it will take legal action against vandalization that has taken place at the archaeological site, believed to be the location of the ancient Vijitapura fortress.
The battle between King Dutugamanu and King Elara at the Vijitapura fortress has been documented in historical chronicles as a key incident in Sri Lanka's history. Historical records indicate that Vijitapura was a well-fortified stronghold of King Elara, only next to his fortress in Anuradhapura. Although the exact location on the Vijitapura fortress is yet to be identified, speculation is rife that it was located near the Kalavava in Anuradhapura. Accordingly, the Archaeology Department has demarcated a vast expanse of unexplored territory in the area as a site believed to be the location of the Vijitapura fortress. Although a hoarding has been displayed to identify the territory as the Balumgala archaeological site, the monument had come under attack a few years ago as well.
This is the ancient Vijitapura fortress in Balumgala. This area has been identified by the installation of a hoarding. This area has been grazed in 2017. A monastery located 800 kilometers from this location beyond the Yoda Ala has been damaged.
Area residents claim that the archaeological monuments have been destroyed during the construction of a wall on the borders of the Alahaperumagama area.
Archaeological officials have warned against causing damages to this location since it believed to contain the foundation of an ancient monastery. However, the monuments continue to be destroyed despite such warnings.
Given that the area demarcated for the Vijitapura fortress extends across state-owned Mahaveli lands and private lands, the Archaeology Department has said that any proposed construction in the area must be brought to their attention. However, the department pointed out that the construction of the wall had taken place by disregarding the directive. It added that the Deputy Inspector General of Police in the North Central region has been notified about this matter as well. Despite such measures, damages have continued to be inflicted upon archaeological sites in the North Central province. In a recent audit report, the Auditor General had also highlighted that illegal activity and development projects have threatened the existence of archaeological sites.
Residents of Lahugala have complained against environmental destruction taking place at the Sengamur forest at present. According to the Department of Forest Conservation, deforestation has been taking place as a result of illegal activities.
The Sengamu forest, located from the north of the Arugambi Lagoon in Pothuwil, is recognized as a forest under the country's law. Our cameras captured the tragic fate that has befallen the forest at present. The Department of Forest Conservation says state officials have given away 3-acre blocks of land to various entities. Our reporters said some families are living in houses that have been constructed on forest lands.
ලෝයර්ට පෙමිට් නැතුව එයා කරනවද සේවකයෝ දාලා මේ පඩිනඩි ගෙවාගෙන මේ කිසිම බයක් සේකක් නැතුව මේ මහ කැලයක් මේ විනාශ කරලා තියෙන.
They have planned this properly and they have utilized their employees to execute their plans. These trees have been here for over 100 years.
දාලා ඒව ප්ලෑන් කරලා විනාශ වෙන තත්ත්වේ රටපත් කරලා තියෙනවා. රෑ තමයි මේ කැලේ මේ යටි කැලේ මේ මිනිස්සු දාලා සේවකයෝ දාලා මේ යටි කැලේ මේ විනාශ කරලා තියෙන්නේ මේ.
The Forest Conservation Department pointed out that there are obstacles in taking legal action as the occupants have been issued illegal permits under the state emblem. It added that lands had been acquired after the Circular 5/2001 had been revoked recently.
The Agriculture Department has said it is a week away from introducing a virus that can be used as a repellent for the fall armyworm, better known as the Sena caterpillar. The announcement comes against a backdrop of damages caused by the caterpillar to cornfields in the country.
Caterpillars, believed to be fall armyworms, have turned the hopes of farmers into despair in the Mahavilache area in Anuradhapura. Farmers charge that cornfields have been infested with caterpillars within 3 weeks of commencing their harvest. The damages caused by caterpillars have affected more than 800 families in the village of Mahavilachia. Farmers of Galimbindunuwava, Yakalladutuvava, Padikara and several other areas have been affected by fall armyworms, a type of caterpillar that has destroyed 11,000 hectares of cornfields.
මේ ඇත්තටම බඩින් උර්ගෝ විතරනේ වැඩන්නේ. දැන් තාම මේ සේනා දලඹුව දුර මේ පහව ගිහින් නැහැ. අපිත් අන්ත අසරණ වෙලා ඉන්නේ දැන්. අනුව ඉන්නවා සේනා දලඹුවද මොන දලඹුවද කියලා අපිට දැන් හිතා ගන්න බෑ. අපි මේ ගොවිතැන් කරන්නේ ආසාවට නෙමෙයි මහත්තයෝ. අලි වැටවල් ගහලා රැට අලියනවා. අලි කෑවොත් මේ වන්දියක් ගෙවලා මේ බේරා ගන්නවා. නමුත් මේ පණුවාට කිසිම මේ සහනයක් දෙන්නේ නැහැ මේකේ.
Farmers in the Galgamua and Giribava divisional secretariats are also echoing similar sentiments. They say that cornfields extending across 5,000 acres have already been destroyed. Our correspondents reported that the infestation could be witnessed in the villages of Marandakalla, Yantampale, Maduragama, Hettiarachigama, Giribava, Sangapalia and Bolnava.
සමහර අය කියනවා සේන දලඹුවා කියලා කියනවා සමහර වෙන පණුවේ කියලා කියනවා දැන් ඉතින් ඒන සම්පූර්ණ මෑරලා තියෙනවා.
Meanwhile, the Agriculture Department has said that the infestation of the fall armyworm is rampant in the north central, Uva and eastern provinces.
We have reached the evaluation stage after conducting studies on a virus that can be used as a repellent to the fall armyworm. We hope this would be available in the market from next week. This virus will specifically infect only fall armyworms. It will not affect humans. Therefore, we will be able to control the spread of the fall armyworm by applying this repellent.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa visited the mother of late Venerable Gangodavilla Somathero today.
The opposition leader called on the mother of the late Venerable Gangodavilla Somathero in line with her birthday yesterday. A group of relatives of the late Thero were also present.
Highways Minister Johnston Fernando inspected the progress of construction activities taking place on the Central Expressway today.
Subject Minister Johnston Fernando engaged in an observation tour along the proposed section of the Central Expressway between Kadawatha and Mirigama today.
The previous government had awarded tenders to a company affiliated to a minister. It was the government that offered contracts to the companies of ministers. However, we have not exerted political influence since we came into power. We held a meeting with the contractors and asked them to expedite the completion of the project. This is a problem that affects the public. Therefore, we paid the contractors an additional sum as requested and kindly asked them to complete the project, but they didn't do so. The President instructed us to inquire into this matter. Therefore, we terminated the contract since there was no progress and handed over the project to another contractor. We hope that the section of the expressway from Mirigama to Potuhera will be completed by the 31st of March next year.
Farmers in Embili-Pittiya have complained that the quantity of fertilizer offered to them free of charge by the Agriculture Ministry is less than the quantity indicated on the packets.
Farming organizations have complained that the fertilizer offered to them by the Thimbulkati Agrarian Service Centre free of charge does not match the quantity indicated on the pack. The Thimbulkati Agrarian Service Centre had offered free fertilizer through farming organizations under the condition of distributing them equally among farmers. However, farmers complain that fertilizer has been removed from the packs by inserting cuts.
The packet indicates that there is 45 kilos of fertilizer. However, that is not the case. We feel that they have removed fertilizer by making cuts underneath the bag to reduce the weight. We will not mind if the actual weight is a kilo less than what is indicated, but there is no way in which 5 kilos could have been lost naturally. Some bags are short of 8 kilos.
Farmers who turned up at the Thimbulkati Agrarian Service Centre to complain about their problem yesterday were informed that the relevant official was not present. Our correspondent contacted the relevant officer over the phone to inquire into the problem.
එතකොට මේක මොකක්ද දන්න ඒ වගේ අඩු වෙලා තියෙන්නේ කියලායි දැනගන්න ඕනේ.
මට පැහැදිලි උත්තරයක් දෙන්න බෑ. ඔව්. වෙනතරම් ඉතින් ඔය තත්ත්වෙ විදිහටම තමයි තිබුණේ. අන්තිමට පොර බැලන්ස් කරනකොට අද තියෙන්නේ.
Farmers are requesting the relevant officials for a solution to this problem.
They are packing fertilizer in low quantities. When we raise this matter, they will claim that we bring up issues and then stop the distribution of fertilizer. The people remain silent since they need fertilizer. This problem has been taking place for several years. The actual weight of all packets is actually 5 or 6 kilos less than the indicated quantity. We request the officials to punish the officers involved in stealing the fertilizer that must reach the farmers.
Retail traders who made telephone calls during the Davasa program on Sirsa TV also claim that the weight of rice bags in the market is less than the weight that has been indicated on the packs.
I am from Galagedara. I run a shop for a living. In most cases, there is 100 grams less in the 5 kilogram rice bag we purchase from wholesalers. 100 grams of rice costs approximately 10 rupees. The wholesale price of a kilo of nadu is 107 rupees. But we have been instructed to sell at 92 rupees. The wholesale price of a kilo of flour is 92 rupees. But we have been instructed to sell a kilo at 87 rupees. The Consumer Affairs Authority never looks into these matters. They have ignored the problems of small retailers. They only care about the larger businesses and exploit us instead.
The Finance Ministry has criticized the Standard & Poor rating agency for ignoring the country's medium-term development policy framework while downgrading Sri Lanka's credit rating recently.
In a statement, the Finance Ministry said that the S&P rating agency had grossly overstated the country's fiscal and external deficit despite its approach to reducing the share of foreign financing in the budget deficit. It added that it is premature for S&P to announce a rating downgrade when the policy framework presented in the budget 2021 has a clear medium-term view of fiscal consolidation on a realistic economic footing. The ministry also rejected the projections of the rating agency that the government debt to GDP ratio would exceed 100% from 2021. It claimed that the projection has been made based on an unrealistic estimate of the budget deficits from 2021 without considering the spillovers from the economic recovery. The Finance Ministry said that Sri Lanka's policy environment remains facilitative of enabling high economic growth beyond the recovery phase while preserving macroeconomic stability. The statement noted that the recent introduction measures to entice foreign investors through an attractive foreign exchange swap arrangement are likely to help enhance foreign currency inflows in the future.
The budget for 2021 was passed in Parliament on Thursday. Now, are the numbers presented in the budget consistent? Verite Research, in a virtual discussion, expressed their views on this.
In the budget documents before Parliament, there is not just missing numbers, there are also different numbers in different documents. Bringing us to a very important question: when parliamentarians vote to approve the budget, what numbers are they really approving?
If you take the example of government revenue, on page 44 of the budget speech, you have a total revenue estimate of 1,961 billion. And then on page 46, you have the total revenue estimate being 2,029 billion. So between two pages, you have a difference of 68 billion. And you see the same problem also applies on government expenditure. So you have again on page 44, you have an estimate of 3,525 billion. And on page 46, you have an expenditure estimate of 3,594 billion. There's a difference of 69 there. So for the first time, there has been a budget document presented in 2020. There's a difference between the budget deficit that was presented in the Ministry of Finance annual report at the end of May in 2020, where in the annual report the budget deficit is accounted as 6.8% of GDP. That's a 2019 deficit, and this is the audited figure. But in what was presented to Parliament in November, the 2019 budget deficit is presented as 9.6% of GDP. Now, this is a difference of 2.8% of GDP, and this is a huge change on the audited figures. So this is particularly problematic because given Sri Lanka's government accounting standards, when you have expenditure that is completed in the year 2019, that cannot be accounted in the following year. What has effectively happened here is that money that was spent in 2020 has been accounted for in 2019.
Or if we misrepresented 2019 with 2020 numbers, that means we misrepresented the 2020 number as well. So the budget reports the deficit as 7.9% of GDP for 2020. The true deficit, it turns out, if you correct for the backward shift, is 10.7% of GDP.
The Expressions Art Gallery was declared open this morning.
Expressions Gallery by renowned artist Jayantha Silva was declared open in Maharagama today. Artist Jayantha Silva has held many successful exhibitions both locally and internationally since 2003. His paintings include nature, culture and institutional sites, while he specializes in human portraits.
The annual conference of the Asia Pacific Academic Consortium for Public Health was held recently.
The conference was under the theme Public Health in the New Normal and discussed the way forward in the new normal with digital technologies, health surveillance and advances in universal and global health. An eminent panel of resource personnel joined the event internationally, in addition to the national level expertise in public health. Hundreds of participants from over 40 member countries attended the event virtually. A key highlight at the conference this time around was the inaugural Walter Patrick Memorial Lecture to commend and commemorate the late Professor of Public Health at the University of Hawaii, who was a global leader in public health.
Now, one of the things which drove Walter was his attendance at the conference on primary health care held in Alma-Ata in the Soviet Union, which is now Kazakhstan. Walter was a great supporter of the Alma-Ata conference and its outcomes, and he subsequently wrote in an article in our journal, "The World Health Conclave held in Alma-Ata was the landmark beginning of global commitments to the shared goal of health for all by the year 2000. He emphasized the importance of child survival, of children, as the basis of public health, and he was appointed the editor for child survival for our journal, the Asia Pacific Journal of Public Health."
He decided to enter the medical profession at the age of 13, pure and simple because of a grave illness which was faced by my mother, and because of the lack of medical professionals at that time, or medical service at that time in the village that we come from in Bariklo. Walter, at that time, made up his mind, I will become a doctor. Having done so, he entered medical college and passed out as a doctor. And his preference at that time was to become a plastic surgeon. And there again, fate intervened, and he was exposed to a patient in the plastic surgery unit where the girl was a victim of a burn injury caused by what you call a bottle lamp. So Walter was exposed to that tragedy, and he felt that it is that area of field that he should be getting into, community medicine, for purpose of education of people in public health.
News from overseas. The United States Food and Drug Administration issued an emergency authorization to use the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine yesterday, paving the way for the first Americans to be immunized in the coming days.
The agency had come under intense pressure from the Trump administration to approve the vaccine's use. US media reported that FDA head Stephen Hahn was told to approve it on Friday or quit, although he called this untrue. President Donald Trump said the first vaccination will take place in less than 24 hours. The virus has now killed more than 292,000 people in the United States. Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar told reporters that his department would work with Pfizer to get the mass vaccination program started by Monday or Tuesday. The Pfizer vaccine has received regulatory approval in the United Kingdom, Canada, Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. On Wednesday, the US recorded more than 3,000 deaths, the highest total death toll in a single day anywhere in the world.
In your sports news, Colombo Kings beat Dambulla Vikings by 6 wickets in a high-scoring thriller at the inaugural Lanka Premier League yesterday.
This was the last match of the first round of the Lanka Premier League 20 overs cricket tournament, which was played in Hambantota yesterday. Batting first, Dambulla Vikings lost the first 2 wickets at just 50 runs on the board. Thereafter, Niroshan Dikwala and Angelo Pereira put on 94 runs for the 3rd wicket. Dikwala scored 65 runs off 40 balls. Angelo Pereira played an unbeaten knock of 74 runs off 51 balls. Accordingly, Dambulla Vikings scored 203 runs for the loss of 3 wickets at the end of their allotted 20 overs. In response, Colombo Kings opener Laurie Evans, who played a knock of 53 runs under his name, was ruled out from the game due to injury. Tixila De Silva scored 31 runs. The unbeaten 77 runs partnership put up by Ashan Priyanjan and Qais Ahmed for the 5th wicket took the Colombo Kings to victory. Ashan Priyanjan scored an unbeaten 47 off 28 balls, while Ahmed was able to score a quick unbeaten 50 off 22 balls. Colombo Kings won the match by 4 wickets at the end of 18 overs and 5 balls. The first semi-final of the tournament is scheduled to be played tomorrow between the Colombo Kings and the Gaul Gladiators. The second semi-final match between Dambulla Vikings and Jaffna Stallions will be played day after tomorrow. Both matches are scheduled to start at 7 p.m. at the Hambantota International Cricket Stadium.
And And that's a wrap of Primetime News. Thank you very much for watching News First. You can log on to our award-winning website, www.newsfirst.lk, and our social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. Good night and take care.